And we're live on YouTube. Hello, friends. I know it's been a while. I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry. I spent a lot of good times with my family, and it was awesome. And it's the summertime, so that's what we're doing. So if you're new here, this is Office Hours. Let me share my screen here. So yes, this is Office Hours. This is your opportunity to ask me any question that you want to, and I will answer with to the best of my ability. And the questions come from folks who are in the Discord, and you can also join the Zoom call if you prefer. Let me just pin this message so people can find this easier. So yeah, you can go to my website /office hours, and you'll find the links to Discord and stuff there. And this is the channel. We're in the KCD Office Hours where you can ask questions. And there have been a number of questions asked. And yeah, there's been a little bit of conversation in the channel as well, so I'll have to find the questions. But yeah, anyway, I guess one other thing that I'll mention is if you're on my newsletter, then you should have gotten an email last night about some really exciting things that I have upcoming, and that's all I'm gonna say there, I guess. But anyway, exciting stuff coming up, particularly on my website. So this is going to look wildly different in the pretty near future. So okay, cool. I always give preference to the people who are in the Zoom call. And so if you're in this Zoom call and you have a question you'd like to ask me, then feel free to ask away right now, and then I'll get to the stuff here in Discord.
Well, I'm here, but I sent a question on Discord, so
Sure.
you can just go.
Yeah, so yeah, I think a lot of devs, or at least I can speak for myself when I was starting with Remix. The things that I had to sharpen my fundamental web skills on when I started using Remix was request and response, those actual objects. My whole career, I've worked with an abstraction on top of those things. And we have an exact, I'm not sure how old the request and response objects are in the web platform. I feel like they came along with the Fetch API. And so, yeah, like I've always done express request response objects and stuff. And so I had to learn a little bit about that. I definitely learned a bit about headers, like request headers and stuff. So like, I think these are subjects that backend engineers typically know a little bit more about, like HTTP level stuff, where I haven't ever really had to think too much about that. But yeah, they definitely don't hide any of that stuff from you at all, which is really nice, being able to work directly with those. Also, they leverage heavily link tags and meta tags, and you have direct access to setting those, and that's part of the API for certain things, like working with CSS, importing CSS files, or preloading. There's a lot of cool things you can do with module and resource preloading of stuff. And there's not like Webpack has had this for a long time, where you can have these magic comments that will tell Webpack to add these things to prefetch or preload those resources. And that works. But the thing I like about Remix is that it doesn't really hide it from you with some compiler thing. What they do is actually you just export a function that says, here are all the links that I want on the page when this route is active. And then they give you some utilities for creating common types of links that you might want to make for prefetching and preloading. But it's all given to you. It's just like you return an object form of the links that you want on the page. And then they do give you an ability to say, hey, when the user gets to the login page, I know that they're going to go to the profile page after that. And so I'll say, once this page has loaded using the links, I can actually tell Remix to preload all of the resources for the next page. And if it's like a very quick transition, then you can actually prefetch those things. And so it won't render this the login page until the me page has finished loading all of its resources as well. So you wouldn't want to do that, but there are certain situations where that could be useful. And so yeah, they give you a lot of really cool power, and it's all leveraging what you use, like with the regular APIs of the web. Like I export this links function, and then I look at the DOM output, and boom, there are my links. So it's really, I like that a lot. And then the same thing for meta tags. You're responsible for what you return. You know what? I should just show you some of the stuff that is in my website here, so that I'm talking about, because that'll just make things a little easier. So yeah, this is when the browser hits your server. This is the first file that runs. Well, this isn't exactly it. I'm using a little wrapper that they have over Express. And so yeah, you can actually do one or the other. And I've been working with their wrapper over Express. So it hits their thing first, but they pretty much immediately call your handle request function. And what's cool about this is I'm returning the response myself. So I'm responsible for calling render to string. And if I wanted to use the new streaming thing that React 18 is going to have, then I could use that. And I don't know if anybody's actually tried it yet and whether it actually works currently, but I think so. And like, there's not any reason why it wouldn't, because I'm responsible for calling this. And that's one of the really cool things about Remix, is that they give me that power, and I get to send a response. And so like I get to choose what headers I send on that response. I could actually exit early here, and instead of calling render to string, I could call something else. Like Ryan uses this for handling a /feed.xml request for an RSS feed on his blog. So yeah, it's all happening right in here because I get total control over this handling. Yeah, so I changed the X powered by to be Cody the koala, because why not? And and so yeah, I get all that power. I really like that. And then when the client takes over, I am in charge of calling React DOM hydrate. And so that's not really like web fundamentals thing. I guess that's just me geeking out over how awesome Remix is again. That you're just going to get that when you ask me Remix questions.
By all means, keep going.
Yeah, it's great. I love being able to control this. But to take things even further, the root TSX is the thing that React or that Remix is going to render first. Like that's it renders some providers and different things, but then it renders this. And so I get to choose the how I render the HTML tag. I do everything. And I love that. I have this special stuff I do for avoiding the flash of the wrong theme, because if you have prefers dark mode and then I send you server rendered light mode, then I have to switch it at that time. I'm going to write a blog post about this eventually. It's going to be really cool. But yeah, so I get to control that. I have control over what I render in the body. I get to control what scripts I render. Here I have a live reload thing I render. I just get all of that control, and I love that. So yeah, anyway, web fundamentals, yeah, request response are the biggest things, including headers. Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest stuff. And then also just thinking about document requests and client-side transitions. And forms, that's another big one. They lean very heavily into forms, and HTTP, like get post using forms. You absolutely can and you will use like a JavaScript only submit. Just call this function and it makes an async request and stuff, but you don't often do that. So an example of this would be my login here. If we go here, I've got this form, and I have an action and a method, and I have no, you notice there's no like use effect in here at all. But I do still get whether the form's valid. I get the error messages on this data that I get back. So I like all of that stuff is still there, but I don't have to manage that at all. And it's all just, and what's really cool is that this whole thing works whether you have JavaScript enabled or not, or if the JavaScript failed to load for some reason. We've all seen this where the JS and CSS fail to load, but the HTML is there. Most sites won't work when that happens, but my site will, and I think that's awesome. So yeah, anyway, yeah, lots with forms, lots with request response, and general HTTP headers and stuff like that. So anyway, I'm actually planning a talk, potentially. I submitted a proposal to 2 different places to give a tour of my website, because it's really cool, some of the stuff that I've been learning as I've been building this. And yeah, some of the tech that I've used, it's been awesome. So eventually maybe we'll have a talk of, I titled it, How I Built a Modern Website in 2021. Yeah, it's good. Hopefully that answers your question, Diego.
Yeah, for sure. And thanks for the remix tour too. That's super cool. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I don't know how to pronounce your name, but you have your hand up. It is Kokumdar. Is that how you say it? You're muted. Sorry.
My bad.
There you go. Hi.
How you doing, man?
Good. How are you?
Good. Man, I got some updates for you. So I've been applying, been getting some interviews, and I got 2 things. So the first thing is I've gotten rejected twice, and like I got to the final, for one of them, I got to the final round of the interview, right? And then the other one, I was supposed to do the technical interview. I already talked about that in the chats, but the one that I got to the final interview, again, they had the same reason of, hey, we need somebody who has experience with these things and who can come on the job and they can start working right away, right? And this was like 2 things that I didn't have. Well, one of them was a Google Tag Manager, and the other one was like SEO, right? Those are things that I could learn within a weekend. I could learn those things.
Yeah, totally.
And basically their reason was, we're looking for somebody who's ready, like from the get-go, they can start doing the work. Like, how do I tackle that?
Yeah, well, it sounds like they already gave you the no, so I wouldn't bother. I mean, if this is a company you really want to work for, like you totally believe in the mission, you want to be there, then you could spend that weekend or maybe 2 to learn those things, and then come back and say, hey, I know it now. Like, you up for this, and you can demonstrate it. That I might do that if it was a company I absolutely wanted to work for. But if it was just like a job, then I wouldn't bother, and I'd just keep looking at other places to work. As far as like the general problem of people just want me to have experience at every job I turn to, I would say that there are definitely those short-sighted places that don't trust their interviewing skills well enough to identify whether somebody can learn. And there are a lot of those places, unfortunately. And they honestly are poor judge of whether that person knows what they think they know as well. So like, it's just, interviewing is hard, I guess. But yeah, what I would suggest is definitely don't stop at 2, and don't feel like there's something wrong with you at this stage at all. When I was interviewing at PayPal, I interviewed at 2 other companies, got rejected by both of them, 2 local companies. And I was flabbergasted, honestly. I was like, what the heck? Because I thought I was pretty hot stuff at that point, I guess. But
Hey,
I
Dan,
mean, I'd gotten
idea,
accepted.
man.
Yeah, I'd gotten accepted at Facebook by then. And so I was like,
That's,
you think that I'm Facebook material, what's wrong with you? But yeah,
Yeah.
you know, I've learned since then, like, I'm not as good as I thought I was. And like every company has different needs, and yeah. And I don't know. It was kind of stupid actually. And there, I can go into that story another time if you want. But yeah, I would definitely apply to at least like 2 or 3 places every day. That's what I would suggest you do. This is sorry. Let me take a step back. I'm trying to stop giving people advice and instead tell them what I would do given my context and if I were in your shoes. So anyway, hopefully this is sort of helpful. If I didn't have a job right now, what I would do is I'd spend about 2 hours looking for a job every day. And so that's like applying and interviewing, different things like that. Sometimes an interview is a whole day, and that's great. But then the rest of the day I'd spend on sharpening my skills and improving the way my hireability, I guess. And then I just keep doing that until you get a job. And I can, our industry is in a current state where I can pretty much guarantee you will find a job eventually following that. You just like every day you go like 8 hours a day. Your job is to find a job and maybe even more if it doesn't burn you out. And definitely don't feel bad about those 2 jobs. Yeah, it's pretty much impossible to tackle the problem of, well, you don't have the specific experience that we need. Because like, first of all, it's kind of short-sighted of them. And then secondly, it is a like you cannot necessarily guess what they need you to have experience with. I guess the exception to that would be if you like if they lay it out in the job posting. Like I don't know if they said, hey, we need people with Google tags experience and SEO experience. Then you could have ahead of time, learned about everything you need to know about those things. I would only really bother doing that for companies that I was like, I absolutely want this job. Like, this is the place I want to work. Then I would spend a week or 2 learning everything that I needed to know about working at that company. And what they would expect. And also like reach out to people ahead of time and say, hey, I'm coming to work at this company. What are the sort of things that you want? Like there's nothing wrong with emailing people. You're probably in communication with a recruiter. Just say, hey, are there some employees that that I could talk with ahead of the interview and just get an idea of what you're looking for, so I can prepare and that sort of thing. Yeah, if somebody when I was at PayPal, if somebody had reached out to me and said, hey, I'm interviewing, in fact, this happened. Yeah, I'm interviewing next week or whatever. What should I do to prepare? Like, what are the sort of things I need to know? And I told him, yeah, I was like, that's awesome that you have that prerogative to do that. So yeah, so that would be something to spend those 2 hours doing, is reaching out to people, getting an idea of what the company does, get a solid understanding of the company mission, make sure that you're happy with that mission and you can get behind it. It's really hard to work at a company where you don't care anything about the mission of the company, and do things that are productive at that company. So yeah, I would try to find a company where I'm like, yeah, I definitely want to free the penguins or whatever it is that you're doing. So anyway, hopefully that's sort of helpful. Don't feel down about it. Like it's not easy to get a job in this industry when you're first getting in. So absolutely, you're good. Don't let anybody tell you that maybe this isn't for you. That's stupid. And yeah, you're great. Keep it up.
Thank you, Ken.
Absolutely. Mokshi, how are you?
Hey, I'm fine. Yeah, I actually just sent a message on Discord channel.
Okay, let me find that. Oh, there it is.
On the bottom. Yeah, I just sent it.
Yeah. Okay. So I do feel like it's better DX to use web APIs like request and response rather than putting something on top of like some abstraction on top of it.
I don't think the Node.js request and response are built on top of it. I think they are completely separate APIs actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm not too concerned about the existing abstractions. What I really like about Remix is that they've taken a step back and they said, hey, we see that things are this way currently. With all of the knowledge and the specifications, the standards that we have now, let's pretend those things don't exist and just create the thing that would be the best. That would be like most scalable, most long-term, the thing that will work the best, ignoring all of the abstractions that already exist. Let's just focus on the platform. I think that's a really wise decision, and everybody should do that with every abstraction occasionally. Like we're trying to solve all of these problems with the existing abstractions that we have. Maybe if we take a step back and look at the new standards that we have and the new features of the language and stuff, we realize that we don't need those abstractions in the first place. We can eliminate all of those problems that we have with those abstractions and just start fresh with something. And so even though there are great third-party libraries for cookies and session management and everything, those libraries can be rewritten. That's not a problem. In fact, like as a user of Remix, I can tell you that it has not been a problem for me to not be able to use existing abstractions for that sort of stuff. That has not been a problem. So yeah, I haven't had any trouble with not being able to use express request response stuff. That like I have at least once, I think, looked at middleware, express middleware, see how are they doing that? Okay, I'll just do the same thing. And it's often not that big of a challenge. The biggest shock for people coming from Express into Remix, I think, is the lack of middleware, because like Express, like middleware is Express's breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so the not having middleware is a big like shell shock for people. Like, whoa, how do I do X, Y, and Z? Like I've always been able to just stick this middleware here, and then all the requests after that will have this property on it, whatever. Frankly, I always hated that. That was really difficult at scale at PayPal. Where somebody would have a middleware that tacks on this property, and then I would try to use that, but it actually wasn't in the same request chain or something, or it was just really difficult to track. Okay, so where did this property come from? So I actually am really glad that they did not embrace middleware, and you find other ways to solve the similar problem. So an example of this would be if we go to this page right here. So instead of middleware, you call the specific function that you want to. And this is actually what I started doing in Express, was instead of using middleware, I would just call the functions to get the values out of the request that I needed. And so that's basically what you do with Remix. Right now, it ends up being, it can be a bit of a callback pyramid that we remember, but it's not as bad as the callback period of like back in the day with Node, because with that you had a lot of problems with error handling and stuff. This doesn't have that problem, but still it is a bit of that. They are working on improving it so that I'll be able to just say user equals await require user request, and now I've got my user, and so like. And hey, check that out. Isn't that so cool?
Is there any reason that it can't be done like right now like that? Why you can't just directly await it right now?
Oh yeah, so the reason that they started with this rather than just going with this is if I don't have a user, then I want to redirect.
Yeah, you won't be able to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And can't you just wrap it on the top level? Can't you just use equal to require user?
Sorry, I didn't understand what you said.
Yeah, you're returning require user and the request. This require user is made by you, right?
Yeah, I wrote that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so can't the API of this function be like it can be called directly after the equal sign, like during the assignment? Or
Can't.
For example, like
oh yeah, so I could say like
yeah.
if there's not a user, then redirect. Yeah,
I could like just doing the same thing, but like where you are destructuring the request during the assignment. Export const loader type of loader function is equal to. Can't it just wrap it there? Like, does it have something to do with the model side effects or something?
Oh, you mean like this? So like require user, like a higher order function.
Exactly. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. So the reason there are two things. First of all, I really hate higher order functions. I hated higher order components. And the reason is that it becomes really difficult to track. It's actually kind of like middleware a little bit. You see this if yeah, I've got a bunch of thoughts. So you see all of these functions that you're calling around your main function. And then that main function is using a bunch of properties that you don't know which of those functions they came from, right? So here I have require user and I get the user from that. If I said QR code is await get QR code or whatever from the request. And like I'd have a bunch of these, right? So if I did those all as higher order functions, it's hard to know, okay, so which properties how did these properties that are on my callback, how did they get to me? Like where did they come from? That's one of the things that I hate about higher order functions, is just makes that difficult. And so we solve that problem by making an abstraction that says, okay, so let's combine all these higher order functions and then spread their values out so that like either order or object properties or something. But we're just like solving all of these problems that higher order functions gave us, where an alternative approach would just be simpler anyway. And so that's one. And then the second reason is that it actually wouldn't work in the first place, because this file, remember, is not just a server side file, but it's also client side. So everything in this file runs on both the client and the server, but this part only runs on the client. And so if you're doing side effects in here, it could be that I'm like get client side info, and here's my info, and I'm using that both on the client and the server or something. If I'm doing that, then Remix and ESBuild can't eliminate this code. That's a side effect of this module, so it's got to keep it there for both the client and the server. It doesn't know which one I need it for. And so if I happen to be
not sure how I'm not sure how they're removing the loaders, but like in PMX, when I was doing that, I did it similar to how Nix was doing it. And that way, if the side effect is like during the assignment, or like if it's after the declaration, like export const loader is equal to, and after that we're calling the HOC, basically the higher order function, it would remove it.
Yeah,
I'm not sure how they are doing it.
You could do that. So you could say, okay, well, I can see that this get client side info is being used inside of here, whatever. Yeah. And so, that's just server side. So I can eliminate this for the client side. And that adds an enormous amount of complexity. Next has had so many problems with this in like building out their compiler. And it works, like tons of people use this. And so it can work, but it's just an enormous amount of complexity and it's confusing for users. And so, but that is one approach that you could take. But it still doesn't eliminate my initial assertion that higher order components or higher order functions both are unnecessarily complex. And so I would just prefer the alternative approach anyway. And so anyway, that's, I'm happy with the approach that they've taken. As somebody who's been using Remix for over 6 months, I've never been more productive. It's been awesome.
And like as for React team for the streaming API, the API actually expects the Node.js response object. So I'm not sure how they will handle it in the part where they're returning the new response.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure. Eventually they'll figure it out. I'm not actually concerned at all. This is the cool thing about using a framework, is that you don't have to worry about it. So yeah, I don't know. They'll figure it out. And my app is very fast. So I probably won't even use this when it's available. I don't know if it's really easy, then I guess, but yeah, my app is already super fast.
Actually, I also got server components working with ESBuild. I just started working yesterday. I got server components bundling with ESBuild rather than Webpack. So that actually speeded up the build times by a lot. Like the server components demo, which the React team has done on GitHub, that takes about 15 to 20 seconds to build by Webpack. And like I created the plugin and stuff, and by ESBuild it takes like less than a second.
Yeah, it's amazing. ESBuild is so fast. I love ESBuild. Yeah, my build, here's my build, and it's also building my CSS with Tailwind. It just deleted all of the cache and everything. And yeah, that's the longest build I've ever seen. Actually, it's probably because I'm sharing my screen, but yeah, less than a second to build a. I mean, it's not like PayPal.com or anything, but I'll take it. It is super fast. Like sometimes I'll say, okay, let's start the dev server, and I'm running both Remix and Post CSS, and I'll just sit here and stare at this output for a second and be like, oh yeah, it's done. I can go to the browser now. Like that happens a lot where I'm expecting to have to wait for 30 seconds. And it's 252 milliseconds. That's crazy. I love it. Okay, cool.
And what do you think of like static optimization, which Next does? Like, if a component doesn't have any loader or action, Next like compiles it to an HTML file at build time. Do you think that is something that Remix should do or not?
Yeah, Remix is going to do like I forgot what they call it. But eventually they're gonna do some pretty cool things. Like if your component doesn't have any interaction, or even if it does, if it has like some interaction, today right now you can selectively hydrate different routes. And so you can say, I don't need to hydrate this. It has a form on it, but it's fine if that form does like a regular post, a refresh of the page, or whatever. So you can selectively hydrate that. Whether or not it will like automatically
the pages.
Yeah,
At
yeah.
time if they don't.
Yeah. So they do have plans for, I think it was called enhanced components or something like that. I can't remember. But yeah, they've got plans for making it so you can have like kind of a hybrid of hydrated and unhydrated components on the same page.
It was actually not that hard to implement. I implemented it in Remix, and it took like less than an hour to implement static optimization and build time.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Okay, I'm going to move on to other questions. There are probably a bunch of people waiting for the last month. So anybody else in the call have a question before I go on to some of these? Okay, cool. I'm going to answer Steve's question really quick. So we're talking about backend. A few weeks ago, you built the authentication system for your website. You were planning on using Firebase's authentication system and strongly advise people against trying to implement their own authentication system. Yes, I have been known to say arguably dogmatic things about building your own authentication. And I missed the part where you explained what changed your mind. Can you enlighten me on this, please? What authentication system did you use? Besides Prisma making it more approachable, why did you choose Postgres for your database over MongoDB, MySQL, or something else? If you haven't mentioned, how's it being hosted? Okay. So yes, I have a tweet like about a year ago, I think. I said, if you're not using a service to do your authentication and you don't have a team dedicated to authentication at your company, then you may as well just use HTTP basic auth, because that's how much you care about security. That I am eating my words. I should never have said that, because you absolutely can build your own authentication. Normally I would recommend using like a library for this, but and the more and more I went down with Firebase, well, so let me take a step back. One of the things that I really wanted to try for my website was I wanted to see how fast I could make it and still get server rendering. So rather than just like static files, put it on a CDN all over the world. That's like lightning fast to get to the user. And then of course you got spinners for all the stuff you need to go get. I hate that. I don't ever want to do that again. So I wanted to get rid of that, but I didn't want to lose how fast that feels when the user first sees it. And so then you're like, okay, well, let's do Cloudflare workers or some serverless thing. Then that's all distributed. It's compute on the edge. And that's great, except then you still have the problem of having to go get data, which traditionally is in a single region. And so even if you're in China and your Cloudflare worker is right next to you, you still have to come all the way around the world to get to wherever I'm hosting my data. And so that wasn't cool. And so then I thought, well, what if I've heard of this thing Fly.io where they actually can do multi-region, or actually where there was a certain point, I hadn't thought of Fly.io yet. But there was a certain point where I was like, I'm pretty sure there's a way to have distributed database. Yeah, it was FaunaDB, actually. They have distributed database all over the world. They're kind of like, you take Fauna and you take Cloudflare workers, you put them together, and or actually Cloudflare also has a key value store for data management too. But in any case, it's compute on the edge and it's data on the edge. And now it's like outrageously fast, like under 100 milliseconds to get a response. It's so cool. And so I was like, that'd be great. But as I was looking into Fauna, I wasn't super excited about, actually, yeah, I was looking into Fauna. I was like, okay, this will be cool. But then I remembered, oh yeah, I am authenticating with Firebase. At this point, I'd already done Firebase. And so even if I have my data on the edge, the user's request comes in, it's like right there, right next to it. User request comes in, it's like, sweet, I've got you, and here's my data here, I'm computing. Oh wait, I've got to make sure you're logged in and that you like have access to this data. So I gotta go all the way around the world to make sure that you're logged in. So I'm still in a lurch, like, okay, great. So then I'm pretty sure you can do authentication with Fauna. And so I started looking into that. But as I was looking into this, I also had a problem with the fact that my site, the way that I'm building my site, is using some features of Node that are not supported in Cloudflare Workers. So I wouldn't be able to use Cloudflare Workers anyway. So I was like, okay, well, I got to find a different way to host this. So I could do, the Amazon just released a new thing that's like their version of Cloudflare Workers. It's compute on the edge. It's awesome. And so then, okay, well, I'll use Amazon's authentication thing. Boy, I want to stay away from that. As like they have certification programs for that for a reason, because it's hard. So like you can be certified. I have done it before, and I don't want to do it again. And I know that my friends at AWS Amplify, their hearts are hurting. I love you all. You're great. And I'm sure that it's easy for some people, but this is just not my area. I don't do this stuff. So anyway, at some point I stumbled upon Fly.io, and that they do, and I'll just pull that up, fly.io. And you can do multiple deployments, multi-region deployments. So deploy app servers close to your users, full stack apps and databases all over the world, no ops required. And I was like, sign me up. So you can have Postgres clusters. So you have multi-region deployment all over the world. You just have like a copy of your app and your Postgres database everywhere. And I was like, that's exactly what I need. And they just make it work so that a user makes an update over here and it propagates to all the other servers. And that works for me. That's what Fauna does. That's how you solve this problem, is you just say reads are fast, writes are slow, because it has to propagate to all these. And that's fine. I don't care about that. We don't do many writes. It's mostly reads. So I'm fine with that trade-off. So anyway, I was like, sweet, I can use Fly. And oh no, I need to figure out what so I was okay, let's use Fly for my Express server. That's actually really nice. I don't have to like retrofit my thing into this proprietary, if I'm doing Cloudflare Workers, then I'm stuck on Cloudflare Workers. This is actually one of the nice things about Remix, is they're kind of leveling the playing field so that there actually isn't a lot of difference between what you do. Whether it's Netlify serverless functions or Firebase or Cloudflare Workers or whatever, they're leveling it all out so it's the same for everybody. So eventually that will be a lot easier to switch from one to the other. But yeah, I thought let's just go with Express. I can do Express. That's easy. And so I'll go with Fly, and we can have multi-region deployment. I currently don't have multi-region deployment yet, but that's going to happen before the launch of the site. So yeah, so then I was like, okay, I've still got to figure out the authentication thing, because I can't do Firebase. They have single region authentication, so I can't do it if I want to have this multi-region deployment. So when I saw that they do this Postgres cluster, it's all over the world, then I was like, okay, so if I do, and actually I talked to Ryan Florence about how they were doing their authentication. He's like, authentication is not as hard as most people think that it is. I mean, there are things you got to think about, but it's not as hard as most people think. And he I actually watched a live stream of him building authentication for a demo app a few weeks or a week or two before. I was like, actually, yeah, that didn't look super difficult. And so, and it has been a long time since I built my own authentication. I use Passport.js and it worked. It was great, but it was, it's just something I didn't want to do again. But I decided, okay, I think that, and actually I'd seen him work with Prisma too. And I was just blown away by how awesome Prisma was. So I was like, okay, so if I can use Prisma and I can deploy my Postgres on fly and have the multi-region deployment like I want, then that'll all work. The data's right there. The app is right there. It's really close to all my users. Maybe they don't have as many regions as you would if you were on a CDN, like a Cloudflare worker or something. But I mean, it's close enough. So I'm good with that. So that's what I decided to do. And as far as like what auth system I ended up using, let me see if I can just show you. It actually, let me see. Yeah, so we've got our session management right here. Oh yeah, so I'll just describe it. We need to move on. I figured that this office hours was going to be a lot longer. It's maybe actually going to be hours longer than usual. So yeah, the way that it works is I'm using magic links, and I love magic links. I feel kind of like they're basically, I don't have strong feelings either way as a user with magic links. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. So long as I don't have to request a magic link every, once a week or something. If I get the magic link once, like Slack is a good example of this. You get the magic link once and you're signed in like basically forever. And you have to do that on every computer, but like I don't care. The magic link is fine. In fact, Slack was the first time I ever experienced a magic link. And I was like, whoa, what is this? It's magic. It's pretty interesting. And so anyway, I decided to go with magic links in part because they actually are more secure, because you cannot reuse the same password with a magic link. And so I don't have to worry about like losing data and then having to tell my users, make sure you go change your passwords if you're one of the people who reuses passwords everywhere. I don't have to worry about that. Like they can steal data. Like I can potentially lose data, right? They can steal all the email addresses, which like literally all of those email addresses are probably public anyway. Like you've probably been subject to a data loss or a data breach with that email address somewhere else. So like it would not be cool. It would not be good. And I will protect against it. But at the end of the day, it's not the worst thing in the world if you lose your email address, but you're not going to lose your password because we don't have one. And then like you don't have to worry about reset password. Like if you forget your password, it doesn't matter. There is no password to forget. And actually changing your email. I haven't implemented that yet, but that's like it's made simpler without having a password. No changing your passwords. There's no like confirm password, any of that stuff. All the UI and the backend to support passwords is gone when you use magic links. So I am 100% on board with magic links. The other cool thing is that here, if I open up this and go to localhost, let's see, am I logged in? I can't remember. So we'll go to login. That's strange. It normally goes faster. Here we go. Yeah, okay. So if I go to login and magic link has been sent, except during development, I have everything, all third-party APIs mocked out with MSW, which is really great. And so it just logs out what would have been sent in the email. So I can just grab this, open that up, and now I'm logged in. This is pretty cool. And then right here, I can I generate a QR code that's basically the login link. And so I can just grab my phone and I scan that login link and I'm logged in on my phone. And that was so easy to implement. I did that in like 10 minutes. It was so cool. have fun doing that if you have a password login thing. You'd have to do basically a magic link to do that anyway. So anyway, that's really cool. I'm actually, it was a fun little thing to add to the site. So yeah, anyway, we're using magic links. The magic link generates an encrypted string that includes the email address that it's for and the date that it was created. And so then when you open up that magic when you open up that magic link, it comes and grabs the Cody key, which is what I'm calling because why not? And we pull that in, we decrypt it with our secret key and everything. And then we see, okay, so you want to sign in as this user. This is when it expires. So we're good to sign in, and otherwise we'll send like an error message that says invalid link. And when that happens, then we create a session in my Postgres database for that user, and we stick it into Postgres, and then we put the ID of the session into a token that we put into a cookie and send that off to the user. And then every request that they make will have that session ID in the cookie. And I can get the user out of the database from that session. So I say, oh, you've got a session ID. Awesome. Let me go grab that session. Oh, that's the user. Great. Let me go get that user. And yeah, and it works great. It's awesome. It just occurred to me now that actually I'm pretty sure Prisma can optimize that query so I can make one request that says, go get me the user that's associated with this session, because Prisma can do some pretty awesome things. So I'm going to need to update that. Yeah, get user. See, right now I'm saying, get user from session ID, or say, give me the session. And then oh no, I do. Yep, I include the user. Yeah, so it's just one call to the database. Go get me the user that is associated to this session. It's awesome. Man, Prisma is amazing, by the way. I just love Prisma. Really, really happy with my decision. Really happy with Prisma, happy with Postgres, happy with Fly.io. And I'm really happy with Remix, of course. So anyway, that's a bunch of that stuff. Hopefully that answers your question, Steve. Here, just answered.
One note that you spent like a lot of time researching all the authentication and like how HTTP works and everything. So it's not like you start working on React and after 2 weeks you can make your own authentication server.
Yeah, that's true. I definitely don't want to give the impression that all of this stuff is easy for everybody. Easy is a familiar, or easy is basically the same as familiar. The more familiar you become with something, the more easy that thing becomes. And I have done authentication before. I've worked at companies that did authentication, so I knew a lot about it. In the past, I've done a lot of JOT authentication. Yeah. Oh, and Steve, also you asked about why I chose Postgres. Right now, Prisma is going to support or is working on support for MongoDB. I've used Mongo in the past, and it was like an okay experience. I don't like writing SQL. I started out, my first internship was a business intelligence engineer. So I wrote a lot of SQL, ETLs and stuff. It was star schemas and yeah. I've done that before. I don't like doing it. I don't like writing SQL. And so I really liked Mongo because I didn't have to do that. And I used Mongoose and that worked out pretty well. But I saw demos of Prisma as like, I have to have this in my life. So Mongo was out of it. I couldn't do it. I didn't want to, and actually when I was making the decision, I didn't realize that they were doing experimental Mongo stuff. I think they may support MySQL. I can't remember now. I was looking seriously at SQLite because a really big part of all of my decisions that I made for my site was, how do I make sure, or like, what are the things that I'm going to want to teach people? And let me go learn what those things or how to use those things effectively so I can teach people those things. So I was thinking, okay, I'm eventually going to update the Bookshelf app, or maybe I'll do a different app for the Build an Epic React app workshop as part of Epic React. Eventually, I'm going to want to update that to do whatever I'm doing for my site. So I've got to think, okay, so what are the things that I'll want to do for that workshop? And I really wanted to avoid having a complex database sort of thing. And so SQLite was really attractive to me because it's literally just a file on the file system. And if somebody's database gets corrupted or something, it's really easy for them to just delete that file or go in and edit it if they wanted to. Like they don't need any special tools or whatever. And so I was really attracted to that. But there were just a couple of limitations of SQLite. And the biggest thing that ultimately won me over for Postgres was this, being able to deploy Postgres in a distributed fashion right alongside the rest of my Fly stuff. That was just like, all right, yep, I'm hosting on Fly. We'll also host the Postgres thing on Fly. It'll all be right there and work really seamlessly together. And so I decided to go with Postgres. I'm really happy that I did. It was a good decision. And I do have Stephen, oh goodness, what's his last name? Stephen, the awesome person. This Stephen, yeah. Y'all have seen him. Wait, Stephen, where is he? Yeah, there he is. He's great. S. Mayer, I think is how you say his name, but he's awesome. And he is helping me build my site. And he was able to get things set up. He didn't have to ask me any questions about how to get things set up. And he's an experienced engineer, but the fact that he didn't even need to ask any questions about getting things set up tells me that I'm able to create a project that people can onboard pretty effectively. So yeah, I'm not too concerned about that. People will have to use Docker. I'll give an explainer of how to install Docker. If I can do it, anybody can do it. I don't get Docker at all, but you just install this thing, you run it, and then you run Docker Compose up, and boom, your database is running and it works and it's awesome. So Docker is actually not as bad as I thought it would be. But yeah, so then you've got your database right there. You've got your, I actually also have a Redis cache that I got set up in like an hour, which was impressively great. So that's also hosted on Fly. And I cache things like, well, not right now, but I'm going to cache your Discord information because I'm integrating with Discord. I'm going to be caching your ConvertKit like subscriber information so that things can be really fast on the profile page. I may not do those actually. It's still pretty fast even without that. But then also, the biggest thing that I'm caching is my blog posts because they're all written in Markdown in MDX. So I have to, and I grab them from GitHub on demand. So rather than building it with the site, which I'm doing right now and making my build take forever, having to process all of that, and then having to rebuild the entire site every time I fix a typo, which I hate. What I can do now is I can fix the typo and instantly go and get the blog is updated. Kind of like a WordPress thing. Like you update the blog and boom, it's up to date. That's amazing. Like who would have thought it? And so, yeah, but because I am doing this on demand, I don't want every person going to my blog to have to hit the GitHub API, go get all the content, download that, compile it with MDX bundler, and then send that to the user. That process takes, I don't know, it's not a long time, but it's like a second or two. And like, I don't want everybody going to my blog to take a second. And I can't do HTTP caching because you're logged in. And so I mean, I guess I could and just have it vary based on the cookie. And so if you build up your own cache, but like every blog post you go to, it would take forever to get to that. So, and actually when you go to the main blog listing page, I'm showing you how long it's estimated to take to read that. And for me to be able to do that on the main blog, I have to download all of the blog posts and so that I can calculate how long it'll take to read those. So I need to cache it. I just need to, and I can't do regular HTTP caching because you're logged in. And so I'm using Redis to cache that. And it took like an hour to set that up because I have Docker. Just added another service. And then and I deployed Redis to Fly as well. And that was easy. And they have the ability to deploy a cluster on Redis. And what's cool about that, I think it works the same way that that Postgres does, where I just send a actually, I think Postgres is separate. So like if I wanted to bust the cache for some reason, like I update a blog post, I'll have a GitHub action that will just go and bust the cache for that blog post I updated. And so all I had to do is hit the leader Redis. It'll say, okay, we'll delete that from the cache, and then it will send it to all of the other Redises in the cluster, all in every region I'm deployed to. And then the next user to hit it will prime the cache, and then everybody will get the updated stuff. And guess who the next user is going to be? It'll be me. So the GitHub action will say, okay, purge the cache, and then instantly curl that URL, and it will get the cache ready. So it'll always be fast, and it'll always be latest thing, and I will not have to redeploy the entire website whenever I make a typo, which would be really nice. So anyway, hopefully that answers your question, Stephen, about the decisions that I made. Like I said, I'm planning on making all of this a talk of like how I built a modern website in 2021. I just hope that my website performs as well as I'm thinking it's going to. It performs really fast for me because the one region that I have it deployed to right now is in Dallas, and I'm not like I'm in Utah, so it's not that far. But yeah, so I'm pretty sure that I'll be able to deploy it in multiple regions without much trouble, and it'll be fast for everybody all over the world. And that's the ultimate goal. Okay, so there's that. Yeah, I think I answered this one. And there was a big, long discussion about this. I'm not sure whether it looks like Rupert was really helpful, and Sud, I'm not sure how to say that, but yeah, Rupert, was this resolved?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, thank you. And I don't know how to say your name. Is it Sud? Suki is the username, but thank you for your help also. Okay. How do we split a next or remix app? Oh yeah, so I've got a blog post about how I have always thought about authentication, authentication in React applications. So, and I still feel this way, especially for client-side apps. This works great. You basically just say, I have the authenticated side and the unauthenticated side. But on my site, you can be authenticated on like any page, basically. Literally every page you can be authenticated or unauthenticated. Well, there are a couple of pages. So like there's this, the Call Kent podcast. Oh, I am authenticated. Whoops. All right, let's log out. So on the Call Kent podcast, you have to be logged in before you can submit a new, like a recording. I'll probably make it so you can at least see the podcast listing and listen to stuff. But yeah, if you want to record, you need to be logged in. But anyway, so the the unauthenticated and authenticated app is a little challenging in that scenario. And I address that in this blog post. I say sometimes your app is like that. And so here's what I recommend. But the other tricky thing, or probably the primary tricky thing of this, is that you're not typically in charge of rendering the router. And when you're not in charge of rendering the router, like you can't say, don't render the routes that unauthenticated users can't see, right? That's one of the benefits of this approach is I can say, on the authenticated app, here are the routes that users can see if they're authenticated. And then here are the routes that they can see if they're unauthenticated. You just literally don't render the ones they can't see. And that's actually, that always made me chuckle, is like you have a lot of people who have built abstractions for redirect the user, do a client-side redirect if they're not allowed to see this page. And I was always just thinking, why do you render those pages in the first place? Just don't render it. And that works for client-side. But for server-side, at least for frameworks where the routing is in the file system, like this, you can't really do that. You can't just say, don't render these things. And so you do need to do some sort of redirects. And we've got that for, like I said, in the call page right here, I have require user. So what require user does is if you're not logged in, then it will redirect the user to the login screen. And I have to do that for every page. I actually also have an optional user where I can say, if the user is logged in, then give me the user. Otherwise, that user will be null. And so that's useful for Yeah, here, optional user. Oh, actually, I used to have that, but I think I didn't need it anymore. But eventually I could do that. Here, hold on a second. I could have sworn that I still had one. So let me find this require user. Yeah, I guess I don't need that anymore. Eventually, maybe I'll need it, and it'll be really easy. It's basically require user, except if there is no user, don't do any of this stuff. So it's basically, oh, that's right. That's why I got rid of it, because that's all I needed for an optional user is you do this. And that is what I do on in the root. So, and here's actually where this is all coming together to answer the question. So here in the loader, I just say, hey, go get me the user. That user could be null. It looks like it's saying it's any, so I got to fix that. I need to turn my linting plugin back on. That won't let me do this. So anyway, I got to go fix that. That should be a user or a or null. And then I send that along as part of the loader data, and then the app gets that, and it takes that data. Oh, and actually, sorry, this is the app with providers. So I get that, and I stick those in some of my providers. So I've got this user provider that will just provide that user to all everybody below, and yeah, it's either the user or null. So what this user provider does is I actually recently just wrote a little abstraction for this because I had a couple of these. And so, yeah, I've got my request info, my user info provider. Here we go. Yeah, request info provider, user info provider, and user provider. So this is like metadata about the user that I don't store in the database, but it's like, so I store your Discord user ID, but I don't store like your username and stuff because I don't want to duplicate that data, right? But I need to display that. And so the user info has the Discord username and whatever else I decide to tack onto that. Yeah, let's see. So I've got like your avatar, because I don't actually store your avatar either. I'm using Gravatar for that. And we've got ConvertKit info and Discord info. That's what's on the user info. And then I've got the user provider. And all of this is from this create simple context. So the simple context, it literally does nothing but provide a value. So the provider is literally the context provider that I create. I don't have a wrapper around that or anything. And then I have a use value and a use optional value. So this is what I'm doing for my user, like providing the user all over the place, how I'm handling authentication, all of that stuff. And so with use value, it's going to throw an error if that value is null. So if it's not there, then that's a problem. That like, yeah. Use optional value is for pages where I'm like, if the user is here, then I want to display this. If they're not, then it's fine. A good example of this is the nav bar. Let's see, use optional user. There we go. So here I've got use optional user, and in the nav bar, yeah, so if I have a user, then the link in the top right corner is going to send you to the /me route. And if I have a user, then I'll show my account as the title, and I'll have a different class name, all of that stuff. If I don't have a user, then it'll be login for all of that stuff. So one of the things that I talk about in here is ternary. I don't even use the word once, but like one of the big problems with authentication is that people have to do ternaries all over the place. And that's super annoying. Exactly like this. You have to do all of this stuff. And that can be really annoying sometimes. But if it got super bad where there was just like so much of this was, it's either this or it's some completely other thing, depending on whether the user's logged in, then what you could do is you just say logged in link and a function logged out link. And then you just literally, if the user's logged in, then render the logged in link. If they're logged out, then render the logged out link. And so they can be completely different things. Maybe they share some components within there that they can share that makes sense. But it's actually very similar in spirit to this, where you say, hey, I've got two very different experiences for the user, whether they're logged in or not. So I'm going to put those in two totally different components rather than having a bunch of ternaries within a single component. I think that this is less about authentication and more about knowing when an abstraction fits two different use cases. So it comes back down to abstractions and how to think about things. If there's not enough commonality between these two things, then duplicate. And that's kind of the AHA programming principle in general. So anyway, that's how I'm doing it now, and it's working out super well. An example of the use user. Oh, and by the way, sorry if that was confusing, because I talked about use optional value. I alias all of these to values that make more sense. So use optional value is alias to use optional user, just to make it make more sense for folks. But yeah, I do have a use user for those places where the user is required. So like on the me page, that's your logged in like profile settings and stuff. Like I require the user on this page. So like you're not going to get onto this page if like you're going to get redirected if you're not logged in anyway. And so I can call use user, and I know for a fact that this is a user. And TypeScript, that's actually one of the benefits of this approach, is TypeScript helps me enforce whether I know that the user is a real user or not. So use optional, oh, and this is still called user. These should probably be called value. Whoops, we'll just fix that right now. Value. Yeah. So yeah, in this case, the value is just the context type. In this case, the value is the context type or null. And so TypeScript can kind of help me. And I know like on this page, the user could be logged in, or in this component, the user could be logged in. If they're not, then I'm going to render this other thing. And TypeScript helps me cover all of my cases. So I'm actually really happy with this, and I am going to blog about this approach because it's great. Okay, cool. Thanks for the question. And yes, we are going to have office hours today. Just kidding. Okay. I get rejected a lot. Yeah, I know the feeling, Yago. Fine. It's fine to get rejected. I actually, I think that as a kid, I auditioned for a lot of things. I was in musical groups and stuff, and there was no end to me auditioning for solo parts or for you know, group numbers or whatever it is, and I got rejected probably 95% of the time. And so I've gotten really used to being rejected, and I'm really used to people not being as enthusiastic about things as I am. I like, there's something in my mind that's like, why aren't you so excited about this? I'm so excited. You should be excited about this. But yeah, I've just gotten used to people not being as into something as I am, and that's fine. So yeah, you can get used to being rejected. It's okay. They're not rejecting you as a person, just rejecting the connection that you wanted, or the relationship that you wanted to create, I guess. And that's fine. Okay, yeah, Prisma Workshop. I've actually thought about it. I'm like, you know, I've been using Prisma a lot. This would be a cool thing to teach. And I tweeted yesterday that the best endorsement I can give anything is to create a workshop about it. If I'm teaching you, then it's because I really believe that this is something that you could benefit from. So yeah, Prisma fits that category. Somebody mentioned XState. I actually had somebody reply to that tweet, and somebody replied to my email last night saying like, when is XState coming? And I mean, that is the thing. I'm using XState in the Call Kent podcast thing. So yeah, that is the thing that may eventually happen. I'm not sure. I think I'd probably go with Prisma first, because I have a never-ending thing, like so many things that I think people could benefit from that I could teach about. So I have to choose, and I'm focusing on the things that I'm using on a daily basis. That seems to make the most sense to me, to help people, is like, what are you going to be using regularly? I used to teach about like configuring Webpack and writing Babel plugins and stuff like that. I don't think I'll ever teach that sort of thing again. Not that, like, a lot of people have benefited from that. A lot of people have written cool ESLint plugins and Babel plugins from what I've taught. But it's just not what I use every day. And so I'm almost cheating other things that I do use every day to spend time working on that stuff. So yeah, anyway, that's kind of Prisma. I use this every day. almost every day. And so, yeah, it'll probably come eventually, maybe, but I got a lot of other things that I need to do ahead of time. I think that I'm most likely to include Prisma in the Build an Epic React app. That's probably what the first time you'll see it. Because yeah, like I want to be able to give you the ability to build what I'm building. That's really my ultimate goal. I want you to be able to build the same sort of things that I build. And I want you to learn everything you need to from me. That's my goal. So eventually that'll happen, hopefully. If I don't die first, I guess. So yeah, and Stephen is awesome. Totally. Here, let's do this. KIF, agree. There we go. Okay. Hopefully I shared my approach correctly or for you there. Oh yeah, definitely, Yaga. When I get deployed like to multiple regions, maybe I'll stick us. I'll make sure to have a Brazil region. I don't know what regions they have, but I'll have one for you just to make it super fast for you. Okay, why did I choose server side over client side? Yeah, so there are a couple of reasons. The biggest one is I don't like loading spinners. When you're doing client side, let me be clear, I've been doing client side for a long time. In fact, most of my career has all been client side. Yeah, actually, this is the first time I've ever built a real server side app that with React. Yeah, I did server rendering for a couple small apps when I was first getting into the industry. Yeah, like I built an app called Spend My Cents that was server rendered with Express, and like what is Jade? Yeah, it was Jade templates. Fun stuff back then. But yeah, this is my first time doing React server side rendering. I've done server or static site generation, which is not the same thing. Yeah, and so static site generation is kind of like a middle ground between client side and server side. So you at least get to send the static stuff. But if I wanted to do, or because I wanted to do the like showing the user's profile and yeah, all of that stuff in here. If I wanted to do Gatsby or static site generation or client side rendering, to be able to do this, I would either have to have like a bunch of use effects in here or a React query to say, okay, give me the user, let's put a loading spinner here, all of that. If I wanted to do that, do client side or Gatsby or something, then I have to have spinners all over the place to load the stuff that I don't know at build time. And I don't want to do that. I don't like that. So we're not going to do that. And instead we're going to server side render all of this stuff. And it's different complexity. It's trade-offs. It's not like I'm just eliminating all the problems. I'm trading problems for different problems. But I like my new problems a lot more. So yeah, that's why. Suggestion on when to use and what you've learned as regards each trade-off. Yeah, okay, so when to use client side. Well, let me be clear. Choosing client side does not mean you don't get to use Remix, by the way. You can use Remix in a service worker, which is really cool. And so that's not quite ready, but like some people are experimenting with it. And that's always been a stated goal of the Remix team, is to actually make it work client side with a service worker, because they have to do that to make it work in a CloudFront or Cloudflare worker anyway. So yeah, if I were building an app today and I had to do client side for some reason, I'd probably make that work because I'm just so thrilled with Remix. Man, just like the number of use effects I don't need, that's really nice. React Query is great and it helps eliminate those too. But Remix I find to be a lot more powerful. So anyway, yeah, I would probably still use Remix for client only. So you're making a decision, client or server. I would, yeah, there aren't a whole lot of situations where I feel like static site generation is much more superior to client side rendering. Like if you don't, yeah, I guess if you don't have any dynamic stuff at all, and you don't care about rebuilding your entire site whenever you make any change to anything, then sure, go with static site generation, I guess. And like you're blowing away the whole cache for every user when you do that. That's the way that Netlify is built, by the way. Every deploy eliminates the entire cache for everybody. That's part of the stated goal. Actually, they intentionally do that, and you don't have that problem with Remix. Yeah. I'm not sure. Like, it's hard for me to say. I guess a big reason why client side or static site generation is nice is you don't have to worry about servers. You just stick it on a CDN and there it is. But managing servers or deploying to a server has become pretty much just as easy as deploying to a CDN, thanks to services like Fly.io, and there are many others. But Fly just makes it really easy to deploy a server. A lot of people have told me that server-side rendering means that, or one reason why they like static site generation so much is because it can't crash. Like the server can't crash, right? Because you build it at build time, and if it crashes at that point, then you never deployed, and so you don't need to worry about it. It's all happening in CI, and you can fix it and then deploy. Whereas like a server that's running, yeah, that can crash. And while that's true, I mean, it crashes because you made a mistake, right? A programming mistake. So I guess with what they're saying, insinuating, is that you can't make programming mistakes in the client. Your app can crash. It doesn't matter whether it's running on the server, running in the browser. It doesn't make a difference. It can crash. If you make a server or a coding mistake in the client, then your clients will crash. So that argument doesn't hold water for me at all. Your app can absolutely crash. And if you're like, in either case, you're probably interacting with some backend if you're building an app. Now, if it's just a developer blog or something like that, and you don't have a ton of blog posts or whatever, you don't care about rebuilding the whole site every time you make a typo fix or whatever, then sure, you can go with Gatsby, go with some static site generator, or even client side thing. SEO is not a huge deal. Like if SEO is not a huge deal to you, client side is fine. If it is, then Gatsby static site generation solves that problem. But pretty much anything that is an app that requires user login and all of that stuff, you're going to be more secure. You're going to be much faster. You're not going to have to deal with spinners and stuff. And you will adapt to change in requirements much better if you just go with a server rendered. So anyway, there I go again, being super long-winded, but those are some of my thoughts. And Remix makes it a lot easier to do server rendered React. So.
And also, like enterprise applications, if they're like internally hosted or in intranet, there's a big market for client-side rendering because existing backends are usually in other languages. So the easiest is to just have some static files in HTTP.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. I know when I was at PayPal, the thought of standing up or at other companies too, the thought of standing up an internal node server somewhere was like, I don't want to touch their internal tools to deploy a node server. No, thank you. So yeah, static files were a lot easier internally too. That's a good point. Okay, sweet. All right. And Darius is giving a defense to CSR and spinners. Yeah, this is actually what I always told myself when I chose client-side rendering over server-side. So I was like, well, the perceived performance is better because the user gets the initial HTML a lot faster. That's becoming less and less true thanks to compute on the edge. So if that matters to you a lot, then you can host your Remix site on Cloudflare Workers. And then it's just as fast. Like your Cloudflare worker runs in like less than 10 milliseconds and it gets to the user in less than 100 milliseconds. So it is negligible in that situation. So if that matters to you a lot, then look deeply into Cloudflare workers. Or CloudFront has a, I don't know what they call it, but Amazon has their own thing now as well. Yeah, and the on the edge stuff is, yeah, if we want to talk about on the edge, I don't know what part of it confuses you, Darius, but I'll just explain it for everybody. Basically, what we've had for a long time is a CDN, a content delivery network, where you take a static file and you put it on a bunch of servers all over the world. So there still are servers. It's not like we get rid of servers when we do client stuff. It's all still servers. You got to put that file somewhere, but they just copy it and put it all over the world. And then that way, it's just a lot less time to travel from my computer to this computer next to me, or like that's close to me, than all the way around the world. That's the whole benefit of the CDN. And so what's interesting is that with static files, you have to go get the file, then you download it again. With compute on the edge, it's basically like they just took that server that they have serving static files and they added some features to it to allow that server to run arbitrary code. And that arbitrary code is our code. It's the code that we send to it. And so when we deploy our functions, then it actually sends those functions all over. Like it copies those functions to all of these places, just like our static files. And instead of just sending the static file, it actually runs the file and then sends what that file tells it to send. That's what compute on the edge means. Is it's the edge is the like as far as the CDN goes to the user, so as close as it gets to the user, and then it actually runs the file rather than just sending the file. That's basically what it is. And typically, like that's mostly, I think the original intent was for, what's the word I'm looking for? Just being able to like redirect people, having some logic there to say, oh, well, they're doing this, let me calculate this thing and then send them this way or whatever it is. That was like the original intent, but Remix is fast enough that it works. And you can actually run, render an entire React app with Remix. And even go and get data from FaunaDB or some other thing like the Cloudflare key value thing, and send the whole React app there. So it's really interesting. It's pretty cool. Hopefully, if that didn't help, if you already knew all of that, Darius, hopefully it helps somebody else. Yeah, and Ashley, again, that service static site generation can make it easier so people don't have to worry about standing up a node server. That's true. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, that with internal enterprise apps, the status code doesn't matter quite as much. But for yeah, like you can just display something that says 500 or 404 or whatever, and internally, like yeah, who cares? Performance isn't as big of a deal either. But yeah, for any consumer apps or websites, yeah, server side or static site generation is probably not the best, especially if you've got like a product page or something. Yeah, you would not want to static site generate that. That would not be good. Yeah, and then there's incremental static regeneration. Here's the way I feel about this. What an enormously complex solution to a problem that doesn't exist if you just do server-side rendering. So here's just a PSA. if you get to the point where you need incremental static regeneration, you are using the wrong tool. I know people are going to get mad if they hear me say that, but that's the way I feel. It is enormously complex to do incremental static regeneration in production. Just the countless hours that people have spent solving this problem that just does not exist if you instead just go with server rendering. Just get yourself a node server if you run into the situation where you need that. Okay. The voices I have for 500, 404, it's gone. All
It's
right.
like if Sesame Street were GTB codes.
All right, now we're going to talk about 301. Redirect. All right, that was fun. Thanks everybody for hanging out for an hour and a half office hours. I actually kind of thought this would be longer because it's been such a long time, but I think a lot of people gave up on office hours and didn't ask questions while we had that little break. I don't think that I have any scheduled office hours cancellations in the near future. Yeah, the next one's not until July 16th. And that's a maybe. That's my daughter's birthday. That's why I put that on there. But I didn't take I don't take my birthday off from work. So we probably will still happen. The 6th of August, I can't remember what that's for, but yeah, those are the only times that I have. And actually the September 3rd, that was for a conference that moved. So that may actually still happen. So anyway, I'll keep this up to date. By the time we get around here, this page is going to look a lot different. I can't wait. It's going to be so great. Okay. Thanks for hanging out. This is fun. And we'll